everyone. Today we are going to discuss the social interaction and everyday life. As you know, social interaction is the process by which we act and react to those that are around us, those things that are happening or those things that we act around us. One of the major contributors of this field is Erving Goffman. As if you remember from the first lecture that Erving Goffman, we discussed in symbolic interactionism. However, he is not directly a symbolic interactionism theoretician. He is also studied different fields, but his contribution specifically to social interaction, to microsociology is really high. He often uses the terms from the theater scene, like the front scene, the backstage, and the roles. For example, he discussed social roles, the expected behaviors of people occupying particular social positions. What do we mean by social positions? Is that social identities that an individual has in a given group or society. Remember, every day what we do is not the same as how we behave to people that matter to us, or when we are alone. We all have different social roles in different atmospheres. Goffman sees social life as played out by actors, and we are all actors on a stage. We are sensitive to how people see us, how people react to us. We try to, in a more general term, save the face. We care about how other people respect us or not respect us. We have also audience, what we call the audience segregation. It is called when we also need certain time that we don't want to be individual, that we want to be alone. We need our personal space. So we preserve our own dignity, autonomy, and respect. One of this is going through the audience segregation. It is when people have different selves and multiple personalities that they show each other. It is the audience segregation that segregates between what you do when in your personal space and also in your personal alone time, and also when you are in a society, when you are with other people. But almost the exact opposite of it is the total institutionalism, where you have absolutely no separation, no segregation, almost non-existent personal sphere. For example, asylums, for example, jails or hospitals. You have these total institutionalization that different spheres of your life does not exist anymore. Human beings have to adapt to this, adapt that they don't have their personal space, adapt that they don't have different selves. We also have an important concept of civil inattention. Now, what do we mean by civil inattention is that it makes privacy in a crowded place possible. For example, you are at a bus or you are in a metro bus. Then you are also within a crowded place, in a sphere, in a squeezed space, but still you can have your personal space. You can have your own privacy. You can listen to your iPhone or you can read a book, and still in the crowd you are an individual. You are a private person. How do we explain civil inattention? It is when passerbys, either strangers or intimates, quickly glance at each other, recognize that they exist, and then look away again. This is a demonstration of civil inattention. You realize that there is a person right there, you acknowledge that person, but you don't get into a conversation, or you don't touch, or you don't invade their personal spaces. Each individual recognizes the other person's presence, but avoids the gestures or the body languages that might be taken as intrusive. Social interactions requires many kinds of nonverbal communications. Remember, our gestures, our postures, the way we look, the way we behave around. These are all nonverbal communication techniques. We still, with our body language, we still interact, we still exchange information, meaning through our body movements and facial expressions. One of them is unfocused interaction. Now, unfocused interaction is that it occurs when people present in a particular setting, but they are not engaged in a face-to-face conversation or communication. but still they also have the body language or the nonverbal communication techniques. Now this is important. You are not talking, you are not in a direct face-to-face speech, but your body language acknowledges this. And the other one is the focused interaction. With this one, individuals engage in a direct face-to-face communication. It's not just about talking, it is, but also it's with your posture, with your body movements. So you are in a direct, focused interaction with the other person. We also have encounters. Encounter means that it is a meeting between two or more people in a situation of face-to-face interaction. Now, what is important with encounter is that the minute you start talking, the minute you start responding to the other person, you automatically break the civil inattention. You are directly in a dialogue or directly in communication with the other person. Therefore, the encounters always need an opening speech like hi or excuse me or something like that. It indicates that you are no longer in a civil inattention, you are in an encounter, you are now at a meeting and you are having a direct face-to-face conversation. However, it may be also problematic. For example, if you are at a bar or if you are at a party and you are trying to approach the other person, whether it's the opposite sex or the same sex, it doesn't matter. You are approaching that person, and that person has the possibility of getting your it may occur as a misunderstanding with the nature of they may misunderstand the nature of the encounter. So what you do if you are at a bar, that you at first make eye contact, and if it's accepted, then you approach that person, then you break the civil inattention. Otherwise, it may have backfire. We also have response cries. Now, response cries is, for example, you drop a glass and it's broken, and you automatically say something like, oh God, or something like that, or I. For example, in Turkish, we usually say I. But what's important about response cries is that when it's research, people understood that people don't give response cries when they are alone. I mean, of course, we all have certain cries when these like accidents happen, but it's mostly happen when there's somebody is around. So we are acknowledging that we are basically showing the other people, the people around us, that it was a mistake, that it's not always happening. It's not our normal self that make this problematic. It is usually the response cries are seen like involuntary. I mean, because just in everything about social interactions, we consider this as an involuntary response. However, since we are most of the time doing this when other people are around, that means that we are actually in a voluntary exclamation. It's the surprise, it's saying like something like oops. It is not a reflex. It is taught and it is shown to other people that you are not making these kinds of mistakes or accidents all the time. So you are again saving your face against other people. So it is important to realize that with these focused interactions, encounters, response cries, it is important to study these concepts because we always take these kinds of social behaviors as taken for granted. However, behind it, when we make more deeper research, we realize that they are complicated, continuous control of us on our own body language, on our own actions, on our own appearances. So when we look at the theories of social interaction, of course, as mentioned before, Erving Goffman made huge contribution to that, and we explained the civil inattention, focused and unfocused interaction and encounters. So why he argues that studying these microsociological aspects are important? He argues that it is the most observing of our actions, because he argues that these kinds of these microsociological aspects give structure and form to what we are doing. It gives an awareness to our own self as being social beings, but also it makes us aware of our surroundings, our social life, what we do, our day-to-day happenings, or learning about ourselves. What do we do when we wake up, when we go out, when we come back home, how we behave. These are all teaching us about ourselves as social beings, also about where we go. For example, at the work, this is a different social context, or school, this is another different social context. So it also shows us as humans shape reality. Now, if you remember from the first course that we have discussed determinism versus free will, whether or not humans can shape the structures, whether or not they are only affected by the structures. No, these micro-sociological aspects, these everyday social interactions that we take for granted, are actually how human beings shape that reality, how we form that reality. Reality, remember that reality is not fixed, is not something static. It's every day, it changes, and people change it. It is created by human interaction. Another important aspect why we are studying this is that it also gives us important clues about the larger scale social systems and institutions. Remember, all these micro levels come together to create this institution, to create these structures, to create the larger systems. They all depend on patterns of everyday social interaction. Another theoretician of social interaction is Edward Hall. Now, he studied the personal space. Remember that different cultures have different personal space, different definitions or expectations about personal space. For example, in Turkish culture, the personal space may be quite different than what is understood from a Nigerian person's understanding. They may be more living as a group, or you may need your personal space more. We experience this, and these kind of differences in personal space may create misunderstandings, may create different perspectives. Edward Hall worked on nonverbal communication techniques. For example, he distinguished 4 types of distance regarding the personal space. The first personal space is the intimate distance. This is a very this place is extremely limited to very few people. For example, a mother and their children, or a father and children, or a lover. This is the very intimate level, the touching, the hugging, or like it's very, very intimate. It is usually considered for people who are in a relationship. Then there is the personal distance. It is the normal space for encounters. For example, friends or other family members, close acquaintances. You have to keep the personal distance. There is some sort of intimacy and some limited forms of contact, but it's again very limited. Then there is the social distance. It is formal settings such as meetings or interviews and stuff like that. There isn't very much, again, or no existent contact between or body language between the responder and the responded. The public distance is for those who are like performing to an audience, or who are like really much more space, much more distance that you don't have any interaction with. The most problematic personal spaces are intimate distance and the personal distance. If someone, a stranger, or not from someone from your close acquaintances, try to reach that personal distance or the intimate distance, then the other person feels under threat, or fear or anger show these symptoms, and then it may be problematic. Therefore, unconsciously, we try to keep space between the peoples. Another theoretician is Harold Garfinkel. He studied ethnomethodology. Now, what do we mean by ethnomethodology? It's a method, an ethnological method, that people try to make how people are making sense of the world. For example, Turkish people are more touchy-feely, or the Mediterranean people are more touchy-feely. But when you look at the Scandinavian people, they have their personal spaces that they are not really as touchy-feely people as the Mediterranean people. Or, for example, in Turkish culture, we always ask, for example, if a food is coming, we always ask maybe 10 times, 20 times, please eat and please eat. Whereas in some other culture, you ask once or you don't ask at all, and you expect the other person, the guest person, to ask something like a water or stuff like that from you. So these kinds of differences he studies in the same culture. This is sort of automatic to us. We automatically know how to respond to other person. But if we are in the presence of some other culture, this may be, the cultural differences may create misunderstandings. For example, if you are from, let's say, a Scandinavian person, and you are coming to a Mediterranean person's house, and that person is always asking you for your own, for you to eat something, to drink something, and that Scandinavian person may think that, oh, this person is invading my personal space. If I wanted something, I would have told her. It is rude. But on the other hand, if a Mediterranean person comes to this Scandinavian person's house and they are not asked to eat something, then that person thinks, oh my God, they want me to leave the house because they are not giving me food, or they are not asking me to eat anything. So they consider that kind of behavior rude. Whereas when we are in the same culture, we automatically know how to talk, how to behave with the people that have the same cultural learning with us. So how do we understand? How do we learn these cultural differences? The sociologists argue that we need to have the background information about societies. For example, not just about in with different cultures or different societies. It is also the same with, for example, if you are talking how you choose your words or what you choose to explain to your mother or to your friends or to your teachers. With different social contexts, your explanation also differs. Your speeches, your interaction technique differs a lot. For example, if your mother is asking, how was your day? It probably means that, how was the school, or were you successful, or if something bad or something problematic happened. But if your friend is asking you about how was your day, then she or she may want to hear about whether you have problems with a teacher or whether you have problems with your relationship. And you, without asking what that person means, I mean, you don't get to say, what do you mean by how is my day? No, you automatically start explaining different things to different people. This is again ethnomethodological. This is again a cultural difference with how we interact with different people, how we choose certain words, how we automatically understand what to say, what not to say. We also have differences between the social interaction of women and men. Now, Carol Brooks Gardner analyzed in her book Gender and Public Harassment that in various settings, in specific settings such as construction sites or deserted places or dark places, women frequently experience certain kinds of abuse. Now, we can also, there's two ways for it. We can also analyze this. If this is a one-person thing, we can analyze it in a microsociological way. However, we can't just analyze the harassment, the abuse, or the male-female relationship in a society just by looking from a microsociological view. No, we have to analyze the certain structural performances, the society as a whole. How is the male and female gender hierarchy in that specific society? What causes to this? It is not just be about microsociology, but it also involves macrosociology. You have to take into consideration the larger picture. And Elia Anderson analyzed how blacks and whites interact in the same society, and he argued that people inspect each other regarding to their skin color, gender, age, companionship, clothing, their jewelry, and all these things. And if you are labeled as safe, for example, you look at someone, you automatically categorize these things and you see this person as a safe or unsafe person. So this creates certain kind of safe haven. For example, you protect yourself from the societal vulnerability towards the violence or towards crime. So automatically everyone just analyzes each other. People inspect each other. And he argued this in his book, like Streetwise, Race, Class, and Change. His conclusion was people are streetwise when they are mastering or when they are developing these inspections, and also they master the skills of the art of avoidance, the art of avoiding crimes, the art of avoiding violence through recognition of, through looking at a cloth, through the choice of color, the clothing color or the jewelry type and everything. And you just, everybody always marks safe, unsafe, safe, safe, whatever. So these kind of behavioral cues and signs help us to interact in our interaction with each other. We also have the compulsion of proximity. It is argued that most of the time individuals need to be in face-to-face contact, close contact. It is not just enough to talk on the phone. It's not just enough to email, or it's never enough. People have a tendency to need for more, to be in a more face-to-face close contact in situations of they need to be in the situations of co-presence. We also about, for example, the audience segregation. Remember when we talked about the back region and front region, that when we are on stage from a theatrical words, if you're in the front stage, we have different roles, with different social roles. We present a different self to other people. And then the back region is the backstage, where we are, if we are alone or if we are in our close friends or stuff like that, then we have a different personality, we have a different, more unguarded self at the backstage, at the back region. It is also the same in the era of internet or the era of technology. We consider, for example, we have emails, but we have the home emails, we have the home addresses, we have even, some of us even have 2 or 3 Facebook accounts. We have one for friends, family, and close contacts, and we have email addresses, we have Facebook addresses for our colleagues, or for more serious type of, where we put on different kinds of information about each other, about our lives. So these are all about how we are at a global and how we live at a society, meanwhile keeping our private life private. This is the end of our course today. Hope to see you next week.